Alright, to finish up the eyes, let's say that we actually aren't just going to paint it here as a complete sculpt and we want to have like an actual model that's going to be the eyeball. Now I've done a save as, which you always want to do before you go too nuts. Keep in mind these sculpts will take up a lot of space. If you see I do a save as, you could start to see they're getting a little bit bigger. I've seen it if you get into the millions that these things can, when they have tons of layers of detail, can literally get to a gigabyte or more. So just keep an eye on that. So I want to define the eyelid, and I want to push the sculpt of the eyeball that I had inside of the head so I can put an actual eyeball in there. So I'm just going to quickly show you, like, it's getting a little fuzzy. It's sharper in some areas. We don't want to razor sharp, but we do want to have some detail to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with my foamy. I'm just going to bring that out a little bit. Smooth out this portion here. So I can have more of a lip that kind of comes out. And I might even tighten that up a little bit more, like so. Right? So now that I have this, I just need to define it more. And I'm going to use my pinch. And I'm going to tighten up the pinch so it's going across the edge. And as I go across it, I might even want to use steady stroke for this to make sure it's nice and clean. And you'll notice as I go across that edge, it pinches that edge, allowing me to have a much nicer, sharper detail to it. Be aware it's going to affect whatever is in the circle, so you really have to kind of look at what you're trying to do, but look at how much cleaner that is now. And then if it's too sharp, once I have it, I can just do a slight blur across it just to make it so it's not razor, you know, sharp. And then I could just use a little bit of the grab tool if I just want to shift things at all. Just be careful, because once again, you're affecting whatever is inside of that circle, with the main influence being wherever the little dot in the center is. That looks better. Sweet. Alright, so now let's deal with that eyeball. So what I'm going to do, let's do this. I'm going to make a brand new layer. I'm not going to change the subdivisions. I'm going to try not to. I'm just going to push this in. So, because in all honesty, if I were, let me tighten that up a little bit. If I were to say, oh, I want to put this in a game or something like that, well, hopefully he has more than just a head. But I would cut that out. But for right now, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to push the eyeball that I sculpted into his head so I could put an actual eyeball in there. So what I could do is use my my freeze tool. So if I go down and choose freeze, and I'm going to paint, I'm going to go 100% and make sure, yeah, let's do this. I'm going to paint that area. If I choose this in the fall off, it's going to give me a sharp edge, and it'll be a lot easier. It's just I'm going to have to do some more cleanup, because you could see where those polygons are. It's going to give me some issues, but at least I could see where it's at, and I know I'm getting it 100%. And I just will have to clean up some of that edge, like right here. It's going to cause a little bit of havoc, so I'll tighten it up and I'll hit Control to get rid of it on those areas, because I want to keep the eyelids. I just want to get rid of the eyeball. Now, of course, the higher the resolution, the easier it would be, but I'm not going to worry about it too much because when we do go to a higher subdivision, this will clean itself up a lot more. But I'm just getting where the eye is going to be and trying not to damage or get rid of too much of the eyelid itself. And that's control to not to get rid of the freeze, and left mouse button to paint where the freeze is. Now if I want to have it a little bit cleaner rather than those jaggedy edges, I can switch back to the normal one and get really close, and you can see it blends it a little bit if I go across the edge. So that means it's going to be a little bit softer in how it handles that edge. And I have it on X, so it's doing both sides. There we go. Maybe a little bit down here. Just a little bit more. Alright, so I got his old blue eyes. Look at that. I think that's... Okay. So we've got that. I'm going to edit, invert freeze. So now he's frozen. I can't manipulate him, but I can manipulate where the eyes are. And this makes it a lot easier because now I literally can just go in with something like my bulge tool. I can expand the brush. I can hold down Control and just push that inward. And I could smooth it with the S, and I'm just trying to push it back. I could use the sculpting tool. I would just have to turn off the stamp. Oops, turn off steady stroke. Now, you want to be careful because if it's too high, it's going to, and you have it like, 100, it's going to poke right out of the back of his head. We don't want that. We just want to push it back. Smooth. Push. Smooth. Push. A lot of rinse and repeat here. Just so I can actually put an eyeball in there and it's not going to go wonkers on it. That should be enough. Later on, if you want to do cleanup, you would just delete this eye socket out. Unless for some reason your character is going to have his eyeball fall out and you need to see something on the inside. But there we go. Creepy as heck, but look at that. So now all I have to do is say edit, unfreeze all. And now we've got that. And there's a little bit of roughness to that edge. I'm not going to worry about it too much right now because we'll fix it up later. And the eyeball's going to adjust for that. But we'll fix that more when we have the eyeball in there. And then I just have to put an eyeball in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Create, Mesh, and we want a sphere. And it's big, it's huge, it's ginormous. There's my sphere. And if I go to my object list, so that was Create, Mesh, Sphere to create it. Now I'm going to go to my object list. Let's close up some of these cameras because we're not really doing that. And now here's my sphere. I'm going to lock the base head. So I'm going to lock it so I can't accidentally do stuff to it. And that way I can just focus on the head. You see the gray, the base, the head is now, excuse me, focus on the eyeball. The head is frozen, not frozen, but it's locked. That's why it's grayish. So now I can go to my select move tools, translate, and I can move that eyeball, scale, just like in Maya. I can scale from any axis, but I want to scale from the center, shrink that down. This is also a good way you could get, like, you know, Spaceballs helmet or Fro or whatever it is. And what I want to do is I want to make this eyeball a reasonable size. Fit right in the socket. Scale from the center. And it's going to be bigger than what you see here. So it has to be bigger than that because your eyeball actually is bigger. And then we're just going to move you back. Position it. And you might have to, I mean, once we get it roughly in the position, we may actually have to go in and tweak the head out a little bit so that it actually is wrapping around it and you don't have this weird gap in between, right? So let's try shrinking it down just a little bit more. How big is that anyway? Let's see. That's a pretty good. Bring you down. Get you pretty close to where it should be. And then once I do that, I can lock the eyeball, unlock the head, and then use my grab tool to start to manipulate the eye so that it actually matches the eyeball much better. And you get that to look the way you want it. Let's do a little bit of a smooth around that edge. There we go. Just a subtle one. That's looking better. Then you can go back over it with your pinch. And start to adjust those lids and clean them up. And once you have that, then we could just take the sphere and we can, where are you? We can, there was a duplicate, but duplicate selected faces, no. What we're going to do, oh, before we do anything, I'm going to unlock the sphere. I'm going to right-click on the sphere, assign a new Mudbox material. Let's make the diffuse a little more of a kind of a pinkish white, so we can differentiate it. There we go, that's better. We'll recolor it and texture it later, but for right now, we got that. And now that I have that and has a separate material that's exclusive to it, that if I actually take this mesh and let's duplicate it and move that one over, and there we go. And now we've got our two eyeballs for that character. And the sockets are matching. I might want to tweak it a little bit more, but now I've got those in there. I could paint those separately, and if I paint on one, I'm going to paint on the other, which is awesome. And then I'm free to go into other details and create the ear. But that's how I would start and set up for my eyes.